Welcome to TimeBenders Talks, the ultimate destination for professional photographers and creative business people. Hosted by Peggy McCartha, a certified professional photographer with over 3.5 decades of experience and the visionary founder of the TimeBenders community. This weekly podcast brings you insightful conversations with business-savvy experts who also excel in their creative fields. Providing you with valuable tips and insights, our mission is to encourage, inspire, and educate you to empower you to find your success. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, you'll find practical advice and motivation to elevate your craft and business. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
Yay! So, as you guys all know, I collect really cool people. So, in my collection, I have found Patrick. He is from the UK. He is a professional photographer. He is a businessman. Tell us all the amazing things that you do, Patrick.
Well, thank you, Peggy, and I'm glad to be here on your podcast and to be able to share some of my, hopefully, wisdom, some skills, some tips. So what I do, well, I've been a photographer for many, many years, and I've also been a teacher, a trainer, and yes, I am into business and I want to build and grow as many businesses as I can because I want to help as many people as I can. But right now, what I actually do more than the photography is teach people how to package their photographic skills and their teaching skills and make a difference in the world by sharing their knowledge and expertise to change the world one corner at a time.
I love that. I love that. For me, I know that I'm a dyslexic kid, and I was pushed aside. You're the dumb kid. You're not worth my time. All these things, and it took one person to tell me, you know what, you're really smart. Let me help you. Let me help you master your brain. And I am a big believer that all it takes is that one person. And I like to be that one person for someone. And I love that you're doing that. Now, you were going to do a workshop
Sure.
with me this morning, but we pivoted and decided to do a live podcast instead. So
That's right.
because that's what we do. We pivot. It's 2024. If we have learned nothing else in the 2020s, it's how to pivot.
It's how to
But
pivot, pick up one thing, do another.
exactly. So we were going to talk about how important your, showing up when you're networking, how important it is to show up looking good, sounding good, all the things. So normally on the podcast, I talk about like what's unique and all these different things. But I think this is something that everyone needs to know because we do live in a digital driven world. We live in an age where, we show up like this. This is how we show up a lot of times. And we've all seen those, people that show up with dirty laundry in the background, bad lighting, bad sound, everything. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about why that's important.
For sure. And thank you, Peggy, for just kind of bringing this back to the reality because, I mean, yes, I do have a British accent, but I'm actually in London right now. So if we just think about the miracle of technology that we have today, which allows us to actually talk to people just about anywhere in the world that we want. And it could be any time of the day where I am and any time of the day where you are. And what it means for us is that we have to really think globally. And so where it might be in the evening for me, so I should probably be thinking about dinner, late supper. It's actually morning for you, right?
Yep.
So networking means that I need to be prepared to network at any time of the day. So my background ideally needs to represent the fact that it could be any time of the day. So showing up for me means just realizing that we are not only global, but we just need to be thinking in a very different way today, that the power of the internet allows us to show up professionally, just as we were in a few years ago, only able to do in a professional studio, costing sometimes millions of dollars to get us to look this way, but we can do this from our homes today.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. It is.
I
And
love.
just when you think about sorry, go on, Peggy.
No, I think there's just a touch of a delay, so I apologize if we talk on each other. But yeah, it's amazing to think about. For me, I think for you as well. I started photography and film, and so I got to watch
Yes.
all of this. There was a time where, having the kind of equipment that I have now was unthinkable. Like, there is no way somebody could have that in their front room, a setup like I have. I have sound, I have video, I have lights, I have, all of these things. And, that the average person can afford this is kind of crazy.
Yeah. And not just afford, but operate in the way that would have taken a room full of people years ago. And I like the thing that you mentioned there a while ago, Peggy, because we're both from the old school of photography, right? Where there was this thing called film, and you would have to put that into the camera, and you'd have to think about the whole process. It wasn't just, you could be on the back of your camera when you were done. You had to be a little bit more methodical and think things through. And I think what I've done is I've packaged together all of those skills that we learned in the good old days. Get your lighting measured up right before you take a picture, because there was just no way to tell in the field. And by being able to do all of this today using really quite easy to access tools, which I'm not going to call out any particular seller today, but we can get these online, delivered to our homes within a few days, and we can be set up. Whereas in the good old days, we would take our film, send it off to someone else to process it, and then we had no idea what we had until all of that came back. But today, we can learn these skills so quickly. Within a few hours, we can be up and running, right?
When I first got my first 35 millimeter camera, I walked around with a notebook and I would take notes. Like, I would take notes how I had the lighting set up. I would take notes what settings I had the camera on. I would take notes of every single thing. Image 1, 2, 3, 4, through 36, because you had 36 shots. And then I would put that film in
Yeah.
the mail and I would wait for a week. And when that film came back, I would look, I would sit down with those pictures and I would go to my notebook and go, okay, that didn't work. This didn't work. And can you imagine,
Yeah.
like, in today's, instant, like, people, to think that's how I learned, is waiting a week to get to see how it turned out. It's kind of crazy.
And sometimes you got nothing, right? Sometimes an image that you work so hard over, you'd get back and it's a blank frame, or it's a
Mhm.
thumb or something in front of the lens, a smudge. You had no idea that this was going to impact you in that way.
Or you had a setting off and the film didn't advance right, so you had a half double exposure thing, and yeah, all the things that could go wrong that you don't know.
That you don't know. And to think that we were really advanced at that time, because we entered photography at a time when we had a lot of real technological advancement. I mean, there was a time when people had just one frame at a time, and people had to wait for, maybe 10, 15 minutes for a single exposure. And that
Yeah.
was it. And they used to burn materials to get flash, So we're in a place today where there is almost no excuse, if I can just bring it back to the
Mhm.
idea of, us looking good. There is really no excuse for us to not make the best impression when we get on a meeting and we're networking. And one of the key reasons I would like to say that we should be making a big effort to look good and sound great is that the good old adage, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And first impressions really do count. It's not just a thing that we say, it actually does matter. I mean, how many times have you met someone and just on meeting someone, you had already made a decision as to whether you were going to connect or you were just going to have a friendly chat, move on?
I think Harvard did a study several years ago, within the last 5 years, And I believe the numbers, and I could be off because I didn't research this right before, but it takes 8 good impressions to make up for 1 bad first impression. So think about that. Instead of
Yes.
just putting the time and effort into making a good first impression, you have to make 8 good impressions just to go back to equal. Not to even like, I don't like you yet.
Yeah.
I just don't dislike you. Just to bring it back,
Yeah.
just to bring it back to neutral. That's kind of crazy.
It is, and that's what this is all about. One of my good friends, David Royland, who's one of the most impressive sort of voice body language coaches that I've met, he actually talks about the fact that what we're trying to do when we meet someone is to create that view of safety. If you just think back to the old days of the Old West, you'd be walking to a village, and the first thing you do is you put up your hands like that to show I've got nothing in my hands, no weapons. I don't want to appear as a threat or something that you should be afraid of. And we carry that today. We carry that concept of when we meet someone, is this friend or foe? And so what we're trying to do is to really break down that barrier of question, that you don't have to worry. Look, see, I'm looking like I'm here to talk about business. I'm set up in such a way that my background's not cluttered. I'm wearing a suit. I'm trying to kind of take away all of those barriers so that you can feel safe in talking to me. And that's really what we're trying to do in the first place, to prevent that multiple do-over that we have to do to kind of get back to the starting point because we made one impression that didn't quite work.
Yeah. And, and people think, oh, well, I can't do that. It's so hard. And it's really not. I know you and it's easy because we understand lighting and we understand camera angles. And, we probably have a whole bunch of extra cameras laying around the house. That's what I've got. I spent $25 to get a adapter so that I can use an old DSLR, as my webcam. But, even if you don't have that, it doesn't take a lot to do a little bit of understanding of light and making sure that you're lit well. Buy a $10 mic and make sure your sound is good. All of these things don't have to you don't have to have a $3,000 camera as your webcam. Yeah.
No,
But
no.
you can take the time and effort to make what you have really good without spending a ton of money.
Exactly. And there's a process to that, right? So when I sort of teach my audience how to look good and sound great, we start off by just trying to understand, what does look good and sound great mean? That's the first thing that we start off with. And for some people, that means I've got a laptop in front of me and I've been using the laptop. And when you tilt that laptop back, we understand the geometry that's going on. But for that laptop look that we all enjoyed a few years ago when we were in meetings, that doesn't do anybody any favors, right? So what we're trying to do at the very minimum is just buy a laptop stand, a riser that will lift your laptop up a little bit higher so that your eye line is closer to the lens that's at the top of the window of that screen. And just doing that will change the perspective of how you appear to everyone, and it will look a lot more natural. And just starting there, and if I'm sort of right about you, Peggy, you didn't start your career as a photographer with the camera that you have now, right? Or the camera level that you have now. You
No, I did not.
increased as you went on and as you learned.
Mhm.
And that's all we're doing. We're taking what we have today and we're adding just some small bits to it to learn and to move forward. So it's an incremental process, and it takes a little bit of time, but we can shorten that curve of learning so that you don't have to buy all those extra bits. And as they say in those YouTube videos, I did this so that you don't have to, right? That's really what we're doing here. We're shortening that curve for everyone who really wants to look good and sound great online.
Yeah, and camera angles make such a huge difference in the way that you present yourself.
Yes.
Like if if I were to say anything, it would be lift that camera up. I mean, get a yoga block, like a 4-inch, get something and get that camera up. And we're not talking about the whole Instagram model thing. Like I'm not advocating for this, like, down. That's
The selfie angle.
that selfie angle is also we're not going to get into that today, but that's equally as bad.
No.
But you want that camera, about eye level. And the other thing is your posture. Your posture is so
Yes.
important. Like the difference between this and this is when you're pushing in towards the camera, psychologically, people are going to think, oh, this person has something to say. They know what it brings you out as an authority. This is like, I can't be bothered. I don't know. Don't call on me kind of thing. And it could just be you sitting there comfortably, and you could be the smartest person in the room, but nobody's going to know that, because when I first look at you, I'm like, wow, they can't even be bothered to sit up and have a little, a little bit of like, caring on this. So these are things that don't cost money, not at all.
No. And it's also about just taking a few moments to make one tiny difference. As you mentioned, it's seating, but also breathing. What many of us do when we go to a network event is we hold on to our breath and we don't take any more breaths, and then we talk fast and faster and faster, and then we start to get to the point where we can feel our throats all dry and clammy and we just don't know what to do. And then people think, hang on a second. Have you just had too much coffee? I mean, slow it down, breathe, just talk as we normally talk, and just think, you know what, I'm just in a space with some great people, just having a chat with Peggy, and there's no pressure. I'm not in my own head. I'm thinking about how can I serve? How can I share today? And more importantly, I'm breathing. So just breathe. Breathe.
And really make it a conversation. Like, I know it's easy for me to say right now, but anybody that knows my story, Patrick, I was always on the back end of the camera. I would be horrified in front of the camera. My son, about 15 years ago, whenever YouTube first came out, YouTube was brand new, didn't know really what YouTube was. My son's like, you need a YouTube channel. You got to start making videos for your photography business. And I was like, no, why? And he's like, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. And so I did one video a month. That was my big thing. I produced one video a month, and it was like a 5-minute video tops. And it took like an hour and a half to do. And I would cry. I would he was filming it and I would, this is just terrible. I feel terrible. I don't know, I feel uncomfortable. And, so I came from like literally would shed tears having to get in front of the camera, to where now I live here. This is me hanging. This is no more or less uncomfortable than, sitting down at a cafe and having a coffee with you. Like, to me, this is the exact same. We can have the exact same connection. It's just as powerful. And it didn't cost me a plane ticket.
Exactly. And the other side of this is that when we're thinking about that process, so we started off by talking about starting from where we are, right? But sometimes it takes, as your son, someone who has that vision and a little bit more of the energy of understanding the outcome, because your son was able to see the bigger picture. He could understand that, well, YouTube is where this is all at. And for a lot of us today, we are needing to get that nudge. We need like a son in our lives who says, look, you need to do this, because this is the new landscape. When a few years ago, well, let's just say a few decades ago for some, we all bought newspapers every day to get the news. We bought a newspaper because that was the way that we got information. And then we went onto news boards. But now we get information on social media. That's where most of us are getting information. And what we've done is we've moved with that trend. Well, the trend for doing business today is about becoming comfortable, being initially uncomfortable when you're presenting online. And what we're doing, as you quite rightly said, is we're just having a conversation right now. All you're doing when you're online is having a conversation with your audience, even though it might not always be in real time. But all you're really doing is having a conversation with the people who resonate with what you have to say. And so if you can do anything you can to make it easier for them to immerse themselves with you, to create that real space out of the illusion so that it looks like I'm really looking at you. And we haven't got this overly dramatic lighting as though we're in an episode of, some of these thriller type seasonal episodes. We want to look real as though we're in the same space. And that's all achievable just by getting a little bit of help. And that's what I try to do for my audience, is to show them the way it's possible. You just need to keep working at it and realize it's the future. It's what we need to do right now to be ready for that future.
I love that, and I totally agree with you. So, what are the biggest tips? I mean, we talked about raising that camera up. We talked about having good light so people can see you. I think
Hmm.
a lot of times people make the mistake of having the window behind them, which, the camera
Yeah.
adjusts for the light behind. So your face, there's no detail. You're all in shadows. And it's like, the room's bright. I don't understand,
Hmm.
So if you can, move around and get that light in your face, that's very helpful. Now, this is one thing, and you can disagree with me if you want, but I'm just going to throw this out there. I hate ring lights.
Sure.
I don't hate ring lights. I think ring lights are great for what they were actually made to do, but as far as using them to light yourself for video or pictures, I think they're horrible. If you've already invested in a ring light, jack that ring light up as high as you can, point it down at an angle, or put a diffuser over it so you don't get those crazy rings around your eyes. Drives me crazy.
It's a good point that you mentioned that, because a lot of my audience come to me from that place where they've watched some videos from someone else who said, get a ring light, it's the best thing. Now, ring lights, if we go back to why they were created, was they were created really for macro photography, for small things, for small items which you couldn't light in any other way. And you're right, they're perfect for that. But when you start to scale that up a bit, it's not going to give you the best lighting, and it's also going to create some shadows in ways that really were designed for just illuminating small objects, and we're not, relatively speaking, small objects, so it doesn't really work in our favor. But going back to that window, I learned some early photography by lighting portraits in a window. But just taking that step and realizing this, the leap from photography, still photography, through to video photography, we kind of have to think differently. So for still photographers, yes, you expose one frame at a time and it's a fraction of a second. But when you're doing video, you're thinking about that continuous storyline. You're thinking of a narrative almost, and you have to be thinking, do I want the lighting to be changing as I'm videoing myself? And most of us are going to say no. It's going to be distracting for your audience. It's not going to create that professional look that we want. So you're 100% right. Create an artificial lighting, and we can do that with, again, easy to access lighting online, and you can have that in your home literally the next day in some parts of the world, maybe a couple of days in other parts. But just raise your game by a little bit. And we're not talking more than if we want to put a number on it, maybe $100, just to get yourself into that space where you can say, I've got real professional quality lighting here.
Yeah, yeah. I just realized I because I'm really new at having the live stream. I just realized we had comments coming in, so I
Hmm.
didn't want to ignore. I always appreciate when people are watching live, so please keep those comments going. G's in the audience, and this was an unannounced live, so that's even makes it better. And we got loud egg, and then we have.
Yeah.
Biz Hope. Hey, Hope was in our live room, our our live room before we message here. Jamie's in the house, and of course G. Okay, G. I know G has something to say about lighting. G, I hate ring lights. Thank you.
And the fun thing about this, you can see this is one of the big benefits of being able to do what we're doing right now is, see, we're not even able to see the members of your regular audience who are just reaching out and saying, hey, and this is the technology allowing us to do this. And the other part of this, Peggy, is you'll see that, just taking it back to lighting for a second, is you and I are using very different types of lighting, right? And as lighting experts, we can tell that. But if we just look at it in the context of the presentation, it doesn't really look all that different. We both look like we're professionally lit. And so what I want to say to people is that you don't have to do the Peggy style lighting or the Patrick style lighting. What we're aiming for is just a nice, even lit lighting setup, because in a professional environment where you're networking, we just want it to not be overly dramatic, and the background can be something that looks like a home or something that looks very simple, but we're just trying to create a sense of, don't feel threatened by the environment that I'm in, the light, the way I'm lit. I'm just here to serve you. I just want to let you feel comfortable, right?
I had a guy on my podcast. This was a year or so ago, and he's a filmmaker, so he had this like dramatic, edgy lighting, and he looked like he was walking out of an episode of something, and it was beautiful lighting, but I was like, am I missing it? Like, should I? Because I love dramatic lighting. Like, if you look at my photography, I do a lot of actors, and I love that edgy theatrical lighting, But I'm like, and then I'm like, no, I'm not walking out of a movie. When I show up online, I should be well lit. I should be,
Yeah.
they should be, but it's something that you have to think about. And a lot of it goes to, who is your audience? Who are you meeting with? How do you want them to feel? What first impression do you want to make on them? Now, for this guy, he's a filmmaker, so maybe that's the first impression he wanted to make. Like, hey, I understand how to make a dramatic scene. Like, I got this dramatic entrance. That's so, but you have to really think about who you're trying to attract, because that first impression is going to attract or repel people immediately. So think about, like, you're spending time out of your day to go to an online meeting. Why? Like, what's your why? Why are you spending this time? Like, is it, are you just showing up because? And if so, like, think about that. How do you want to show up? Are you just the person that's like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. And so that's definitely, let's see what G said here. That's a great point, Patrick. Even when two different styles of lighting in the video, they look great. Yeah, that is a good point. And I hadn't even thought of that. But we're both well lit, and we definitely aren't in the same room, but we don't clash.
No. And it's about rapport, right? I think the point that you were leading into there leads nicely into the psychology of rapport. When we are networking, one of the things that we really want to do is to be very close to the level. If you want to think about levels, we want to make sure that if a person turns up into a networking, a professional meeting, and they don't quite resonate on the level of rapport with everyone else in the room, it's going to make it that much more challenging for them to actually connect. Because if we remember, what we're here for is to connect. We want to resonate with our audience, but we then want to take it a step further to actually connect. So I'm speaking your language. And just think about what it would be like if I were speaking a completely different language to you, or if I had a very strong accent that made it really challenging for us to really connect to each other. You can see that there's almost like a barrier there. And we have to now fight through that barrier to find those places where we connect. And so we're just trying to make it easy for our audience. It's not about changing who we are. It's about just recognizing that getting that lighting and getting the sound right, it just makes it easier. Just getting into rapport. So I like the point that, we came from this lighting and the window lighting into moving into this kind of sense of getting now into rapport, because it's all about the psychology of connection, right? Everything that we're doing is that connecting. And so what I'm trying to do is to help everyone understand that getting these technical bits to work is only serving you connecting with your audience. That's really all this is for. It's not so that we can say we have a wonderful camera. And I'm sure you have this, Peggy. You go to, you're photographing an event or you're photographing a person. Someone says, "What camera is that?" I bet it takes good pictures, as if it has nothing to do with you. It's got a lot to do with your intent, right?
Yeah, I think every professional photographer can agree that we love those comments like, "Oh my gosh, that's such a nice camera." That you take such great pictures. What camera do you shoot with? It's like, okay, yes. Uh, but it's really true. It's really true that it's how you use your tool. You don't have to have an expensive tool, but do you know how to use it? Use everything you have to its fullest. I push every single thing I have to the limit. I don't always have the
Oh,
most
yes.
expensive things, but I will learn how to use it and I will figure out where its limits are and I will push it all the way. And then I'll see what happens when I push it just past its limits. Like, how far past your limit can I
Oh,
push
yes.
you? um, and and showing up, I think intention, I love that you said intention, because that's really everything, right? Like, if you, as
Yes.
photographers, we capture people's emotions, we capture their essence. Well, what is that? Their essence is their intention. So let's
Yes.
flop this away from video and showing up. Let's talk about, as a photographer, when I'm photographing someone,
Hmm.
if that person is like, "Oh my god, I hate getting my pictures taken. I always look weird. I hope my hair's okay. Oh my God, I hope I don't look fat here. Is my eye going to do that weird thing?" Then they're not going to love the pictures we took, because
Yeah.
we're going to
Yeah.
capture all that insecurity. And so take
Yeah.
that back to here. So you could do everything right, but if you are just like worried about all the tech stuff and not worrying about intention and
Hmm.
connecting and all of those things, then you may have the best setup in the world and still not connect, because you're worried about something that is superficial instead of doing all of the things to help you connect. Remember,
Yes. Yes.
we climb mountains so that we can see the world, not so the world can see us. And
100%. I love that.
when you're here, it should be so that we can see and connect with people, not so that, "Oh, look at me." It's like, "No, let me look at you. Let me look at you. I don't want to
Indeed.
distract you." And so I think that when we have that mindset in our presentation, then that's where the connection comes. I love that you said the intention and connection.
Thank you, and I love the way you put it, because with photography, I remember when I would go into a corporate event and I'd be photographing people who are quite powerful leaders in their organizations, and there's a certain level of trust that gets put your way as a photographer, but they're reading your body language. They're reading how much intention you bring into the room, how much what we might call the emotional intelligence about you as a person. And all of this comes across, and you're quite right, because whatever's going on inside is going to come out in the way we present ourselves as human beings. And I like this statistic where we talk about the amount of body language which is representative in a real face-to-face conversation. Well, it might surprise many people to know that it actually intensifies, because what you can see of me right now is a circle, just a small portion of me. So what you can't see, if you can't see my hand gestures, if you can't see some of my body and how I'm moving, all of that focuses all of your attention now on what you can see. And so if I've got something in the background that's a little bit distracting, a book. I mean, we have this where we have this well-placed book to tell the world we've written a book. But now what does your audience start doing? Start focusing on the things that they can see. So body language, voice, intonation, tilting your head, all of these things now become much more important. So this is where I think intention and the psychology becomes important. And I learned this from Marissa Peer. She talks about the fact that we can talk to ourselves with really positive stuff, and we can say, I look beautiful, I feel great. And when I'm doing this presentation, I'm serving my audience, and I love serving them, and they love seeing me turn up, even on my not so great days. And all of that matters. All of that is so important. The body language, still need it.
Yeah. And I I love that you said like it intensifies, because it's not that you are lacking, it's that you are, changing. One of our audience members is hearing impaired. And so right now I know that they're probably listening to us with captions, right? It doesn't mean that
Yeah.
they're having a bad experience, they're having a different experience. And so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this is a different experience than, face to face. But we're still humans, and we still understand eye contact, and we still understand when I'm talking, I am 90% right here. My eyes are in my camera. I may glance at the screen to
Yes.
see what Patrick's doing, but if I'm talking to you. And because I know that when I look into my camera, I'm looking right at you. Like when you're looking at this video,
Yes.
I'm staring you in the eyes. And those are things that, you're in a meeting, a networking thing, of course you're going to be here and there. You're going to be looking at notes. You're going to be taking notes. You're going to be doing all the things. But when you're up to talk, you shouldn't be looking at like, how do I look? Is my hair okay? Like, as I'm talking, like, that doesn't matter. I should be looking straight
No.
into my camera. And that's another point of connection, like, because we are humans and we love eye contact. Like, we understand that. I mean, not just humans, animals, like, they understand eye
Yeah.
contact, and that's how they communicate. So, really think about that when you're showing up, is when you're talking, put those eyes right there in the lens.
Yeah. And the thing that allows me to do that is I'm actually not thinking about me. I'm thinking about serving my audience. I'm thinking about serving whoever's going to in the future listen, whoever's listening right now. I'm thinking, I want to make sure that I'm giving value. And eye contact is that part of us, which, as we say, the eyes are the windows to the soul, right? That is really what's telling the story. I'm sure you've seen it where someone is saying something, but their eyes are not saying the same thing. you know, we know, we can
I'm
tell.
totally
So,
fine.
and, and you learn this after taking as many photos as we've taken. When you did the classic headshot, the character study, that tells so much. And one of the things that we do, what's the rule, is make sure the eyes are in focus, right? Even if you're going to use a really shallow depth of field, you need that leading eye in focus, because that tells you everything. And what we want to make sure of is that when we're creating our frame, when we're sharing ourselves in any capacity, that we probably are not talking in real time to our audience, we have to remember that someone's going to be watching this, hopefully in 10 years' time, and they'll look at it and they'll say, actually, Patrick and Peggy, they did walk the talk. They did what they teach. They actually practiced what they preach. And I think that's the key thing here, is that keep things really simple and natural. It's a conversation, right?
Absolutely. And I love that you said when you're talking, you're not worried about yourself. You're worried about the connection. You're worried about everybody else. And I think that's ultimately what I was trying to say as well. And I think that it needs to be said from 15 different directions so that everybody that's listening
Oh, yes.
really understands that um, nobody's nobody's looking at you and judging you. Like, just
No.
show up and make a connection. Don't worry about all these little things that as humans we worry about. You have an opportunity that, like, Patrick, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have even had the technology to have a conversation with you live like this
Mm, mm,
and share
mm,
it. There's,
mm.
I mean, this is, I maybe 5 years ago, but definitely not 10 years ago. And
No.
definitely we're living in a time where we can make connections with people all over the world, and we we don't like the way the world is. Well, guess what? We have the opportunity to change it. Because
Oh, yes.
we've seen behind the curtain. We can't be lied to anymore. We have this
Mm,
technology. So, and when you show up authentically, you're going to attract other authentic people that are going to want to, like, change the world with you. Change the world one person at a
yeah.
time. I mean, G and I, we found each other. Like, everybody here, I've got the chats are getting on top of me again. I'll give it. I'll put the chats up in a second. Um, um, but
Okay.
but all these people here, they showed up because I showed up. When
Yeah.
you show up
Yeah.
authentically, that's why Patrick and I, we crossed paths like this, like, really quick. And then one time we were like, hey, let's
Mm,
talk.
yeah.
Oh, you know what? Let's hang out.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
That's
doing
right.
the same thing, on the opposite side of the world, where we are, like, trying to raise the bar in our industry. We are trying to help people. We are trying to change our world. And, this is the first time that we've had, like, a long discussion. You would think that we knew that we lined up on all of these points, but it's just been, because we showed up, and G and I can talk for hours.
Yeah.
Because when
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you make those connections, and it's just easy and fun, and then you realize the world's not so dark. The world's not so bad. The
No.
world's full of amazing
No.
people. The world is full of amazing people, and if you're only attracting the cruddy people, then maybe think about how you're showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's coming back to that. What's the definition of looking good and sounding great, right? When we start to decipher that for ourselves and we say, well, looking good is about that authentic self being you, not trying to be someone else, because as the statement goes, everyone else is already taken. So if we just be ourselves, we've all got a message in us. We've all got something that our life experience, however short you might think, your life experience has earned you something, some kudos, some relevance to the world. And as you said, your son was able to teach you how to get online. Now, he might have thought, well, I don't normally think I would have anything to teach my mom. But the reality is he did. And we all have the ability to do that. And so
Mhm.
once you've figured out that you know how to look good on camera, you know how to sound great on camera, well, here's the next step. You kind of need something to say, right? You need to organize what you're going to say so that it can be digested by your audience. And that includes things like storytelling. You've told stories, and I often tell stories about my past because stories connect us. If I tell a story and you like, I went through that, I understand that. And the story can help us to connect. And we use things like memory techniques to kind of structure your story so that key things that you say stand out. So you'll probably have heard me mention look good, sound great a few times. Well, why do I do that? Because I want to let people know that this is what I do. I help people to look good and sound great. But once you've got that content, well, it's about the impact. And so you need to pull all of those four things together so that you look good, people like looking at you, sound great, you have some great content to share, but you do that in such a way that it leaves a lasting impression on your corner of the world. That's all we're trying to do, right?
Absolutely. Amy Lancy said this, and I love this quote, so I'm going to blotch it up, but I'm going to do my best. She said, "Your resume shows that you're qualified. As photographers, our resumes, our portfolio, that shows that we're qualified,
Yes.
but our story shows that we're an expert. It's our
Oh, yes.
story that sets a lot of people are qualified. A lot of people technically do the same thing you do, whatever it is that you're doing. Lots of people do that thing, but your story is what
Yeah.
makes you stand out as an expert. It's what shows you to
Yes.
be different than your resume or your portfolio.
And also the thing is, you and I will take the same photograph, the exact same scene. We might even use the same cameras, but what we produce is our viewpoint. What
Hmm.
we do is we go and we do something that we think, okay, that's the way I would do it. And I might look around and see Peggy doing something different. I'm thinking, I wonder why Peggy's doing that. Why is she doing that? And I will then learn from you a different tool, a different way of seeing the world. And my world becomes richer as a result, because I now know not only the way I would do it, but I also know the way Peggy would do it. And then we see someone else in the room, and they like, no, but I would have done it that way. And so suddenly we go from this one single viewpoint to this world, this rich world of understanding each other, right? Learning from each other. And that's really what this is all about, I think.
Absolutely. That's what life is about, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I'll share something with you, which this was a few years ago. This was probably about 2016, 2015. And I used to listen to Les Brown all the time when I was sort of going to work. I was involved in corporate training, and I was still doing my photography, but I was involved in corporate training at the time. And I remember taking a train, the same train every day, and I would go out on this journey, which was about an hour and a bit, and I would be listening to Les Brown, and he has this wonderful speech, "It's possible." And I kept thinking to myself, wouldn't it be nice if I could meet Les Brown one day, just to sit with Les Brown and just learn from Les? Because there's so much I'd love to ask him about. He tells his story, and he tells about how it wasn't always smooth. There were some ups and some big downs. And I kept thinking, I'd love to meet Les Brown. And it just so happened that one of my, a fellow who became one of my mentors, did an ad in Facebook. And I saw this ad, clicked on it. And lo and behold, he mentioned that Les Brown was coming to London. And I thought, no, I gotta go to this. I gotta go to this. And to cut a long story short, I actually got to have dinner with Les
Oh,
Brown.
wow.
And what was actually, it was wonderful. I must tell you the full story one day. But one of the bits about this was towards the opportunity where we were going to have dinner with Les, I was asked if I wouldn't mind moving from the seat that I was going to be in. Now, I didn't know where I was going to be, but I was asked, would you mind moving? Because we just want to seat a couple together. And it's really difficult with the way we've got people seated. And I could have thought in that moment, nah, I'm keeping my seat because, after all, I've got the seat, it's not my problem. But I thought, no, look, I'm going to be in a room with Les Brown. But more importantly, I'm going to do, what makes sense. This is what's right. This is what's good for everybody. They're a couple. Let them sit together. Let them enjoy this experience together. What I didn't realize was that put me right next to Les Brown. So I was able to literally sit with Les
Gosh.
Brown on my right-hand side because I was open to the opportunity of it's possible. So for anyone who's thinking today, it's not easy. Oh, it's easy for Patrick and Peggy to say, you've been photographers. You've spent many, many years, just to be clear with everyone, we were mostly behind the camera. Right? We weren't always in front of it. But to say, I don't know if this is possible for me. I just want to say to you that please, if you don't believe me, go and listen to Les's speech. But things that you hold in your mind, in your imagination, it's all possible. So just take a step, move forward, learn something new, and seek for people who can help you to move in the right direction. And Peggy's amazing at photography, business, and all things to do with just creating stuff. And I dovetail within that with taking my photography and my teaching and just helping people to change their corner of the world one step at a time. But it's possible. Trust me, it is.
This was amazing. Like that's an amazing story. And that's like an amazing summary, recap of everything we talked about. I'm speechless. I think that's awesome. I'm always saying, like, just be a kind human. Like, it doesn't take a lot of energy.
Yes.
And so think if you had like think about that, because we've all been in that person like, no, meh, 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 you know, and then all of a sudden you realize, you know, who's sitting there and who saw you being a jerk. Everyone around you, you put that energy out,
Yeah.
and you know
Yeah.
that dinner that you had would probably have not happened, because you would have been that guy that couldn't be bothered to be moved down one seat, like.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
but you know, what a terrible first impression you had an opportunity to make and you didn't. Instead, you chose to make a good
Didn't.
first impression. And so just
Yeah.
showing up authentically, just being kind, just caring about people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's hard, just to show up kind and care about people, you know. And I think that
No.
it takes us so far. And I love everything. I've just enjoyed getting to know so much more about you. And I love how, you know, we've just
Thank
been
you.
able to have this conversation, and it's been really intense for me. I love it. So just to recap,
Thank you.
show up, right? Show up with good energy, show up with good lighting, get that camera up, do the things you can do. And what other thing do we need to recap? It's not about you, it's about connecting. So just show up and relax and have fun. What am I missing, Patrick? What else do I need?
Well, we start from where you are with what you have, and learn from other people, take other people's viewpoints into consideration, and just realize that it doesn't matter what you might be thinking in that moment. If you're focused on yourself, everything is going to be tough. But just focus on who you can serve. Just change the viewpoint for a second. And I believe it was Wayne Dyer that said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So just do that for a moment. Just think, it's not about me. Who can I serve today?
Exactly. Exactly. Patrick, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And Time Benders, you're going to see Patrick around. I'm going to like twist his arm and make sure he hangs out in our community a lot. And I hope I have the opportunity to do
I'll
the
be back.
same thing. But it has been amazing, and I appreciate every second of this. So thank you so much. And I will see all the rest of you next week. Now, Patrick, in the description, I'm going to add, it's not in there right now because this was an impromptu thing, but I'm going to add how people can
It
get a
was.
hold of you. We want them to make sure they follow you, connect with you on LinkedIn. What other platforms do you like for people to follow you on?
So at the moment, it's mainly LinkedIn for me. I do have a Facebook page, and I do have a gift actually for your audience. So
Okay.
I have a gift on, yes, indeed, indeed. I mentioned David Roylance earlier on, an amazing person who I cannot say enough about. But David is one of the members of my community. Much like you, I've learned that we need to build a community. So if anyone wants to take advantage of a course that this is really the only place you'll ever find this course. I could say so much about David, but for now, I'm just going to say there's a free gift of a course that teaches you the deeper details about what I've discussed today, the things that I talked about. David encapsulates this so perfectly, and I'm going to give you free access to that course for life. So I'm going to give the link to Peggy, and she'll post it up for you. Take
All right.
advantage of it while it's free.
So I will put that in the comments on YouTube, and I will pin that comment. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, on Apple, on whatever, jump over to YouTube, and while you're there, subscribe. Jump over to YouTube, and it'll be pinned in the comments on the YouTube channel. So, all right, thank you so much. I
It's
love
free,
gifts.
Peggy.
I love
Just
gifts.
It's free just for the summer. Just for the summer. We're gonna stop giving it out free at the end of the summer, but for your community, they'll have it till the end of summer. They can get free access. And I
Okay,
just
so
want to
this
say
is
thank you, Peggy, for giving me
2024.
the opportunity.
You come in and listen.
Yeah,
You come in another time. You should have caught us before. So, but the summer of
you should have
2024.
come before.
Patrick, thank
That's
you.
right. That's right. Thank you very much, Peggy. I appreciate it. Thanks to all of your guests who joined us and commented, and those who I won't get to meet live, but in the future. Thank you.
Absolutely. You will find them in the future.
Thanks for listening to TimeBenders Talks. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Being a creative business person doesn't have to be lonely. Schedule a tour of the TimeBenders community today and discover how you can join this amazing group of creative professionals and be a part of a supportive and encouraging community where everyone thrives and succeeds. Click on the link in the description.